A very warm welcome to all those viewing this webinar, and I hope this talk will provide useful and practical information on healthy screen use for young children. The term screen use refers to the use of TVs, smartphones, tablets, and computer screens. My name is Dr. Wong, and I am a developmental pediatrician at KK Women's and Children's Hospital. Ever since smartphones and tablet devices came into regular use after the year 2000, they have become ubiquitous, and generations of children to come will grow up using screen devices regularly. As a result, it has become increasingly important to strike a balance between screen use and other childhood activities. Headlines such as these have highlighted how an imbalance caused by situations such as pandemic lockdowns can be detrimental to a child. Let us take a look now at the pros and cons of screen use. Not all screen use is bad. Screen devices can be effectively used for online education, such as what I'm trying to do now. Screen devices can also provide social and family bonding opportunities through interactive co-viewing and video calls to loved ones whom we are unable to meet with. Well-designed content, such as documentaries, news channels, and even entertainment programs such as TV series and movies can be educational and fun. However, we often need to exercise discretion in selecting what we watch, as there is a lot of poor quality content on the internet too. What then are the cons of screen use that should make us concerned? Firstly, there is research evidence to show that excessive baby TV exposure with limited language content can actually lead to language and learning delays. Children need two-way communication to learn language, which a screen device often cannot provide. Secondly, in older school-age children, research has shown that having TVs in bedrooms are associated with increased academic and behavioral difficulties. Thirdly, screen use at night or having screen devices in bedrooms again are associated with disrupted sleep. Finally, poor habits such as snacking while watching programming, together with overuse of handheld screen devices, can lead to physical health issues like obesity and myopia. As you have just heard, there's a lot of medical research published about the detrimental effects of screen use. However, sometimes the simplest research studies can highlight the most glaring points. Let me share a couple with you. In this first study, Dr. Jenny Radeski and her team in Boston, USA, held a study where the researchers simply sat in some fast food restaurants in Boston and quietly observed screen use and interactions in the families having meals around them. They were able to record that almost 3/4 of families use screen devices during meal times, and for those who did, there was less conversation between parents and children. Parents also took a longer time to respond to their child, and there was more conflict related to screen device use during the meal time. Hence, communication and behaviors were already noted to be affected by screen use during a regular family event. Another elegant mouse model study conducted by Dr. Dimitri Christakis and his team in Seattle showed how even background screen use could cause lasting changes in the brains and behavior of newborn mice. The study team took one group of newborn mice and kept them in regular housing throughout. They then took a second group of newborn mice and played Cartoon Network around the housing 6 hours per day for 6 weeks. Bear in mind that the mice were not watching the program, but were just exposed to background light and sound overstimulation. After putting the mice back in standard housing for 10 days, the study team then conducted behavioral testing by recording the movement patterns of the mice. As shown, you can see that in the regular housed mice, their natural behavior was to run around the edge of the housing to avoid being seen and caught by potential predators. These mice rarely cross the middle of their housing. However, in the overstimulated mice, the mice were much more hyperactive and had impulsive behavior with poor safety awareness. These are the same features we see in ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, And this study showed that even after a break from the screens, the overstimulation caused lasting changes in the behavior of newborn mice. This makes us realize that the same could be happening to our very young children purely from background screen exposure. So, those studies are from the US. What has local research in Singapore found then? Well, in the Department of Child Development at KK Hospital, we conducted a study in 367 preschool children with developmental delays, where we gathered information from parents about the children's screen use, behavior, sleep, and development. Results from this study showed that the presence of screen devices in the children's bedrooms and screen use before 18 months of age were associated with more behavioral difficulties in preschool children and through an effect on sleep difficulties. We would therefore predict that removing screen devices from bedrooms and avoiding screen use before 18 months old would have a beneficial effect on preschool children's sleep and behavior. Other data from the same study we did yielded worrying information. Over 90% of preschool children with developmental delays were exceeding the American Academy of Pediatrics, AAP, recommendations for screen use. The average screen use was almost 4 hours daily, whereas the recommended maximum screen use for preschool children is under 1 hour per day. Our study also showed that almost 60% of children had screen devices in their bedrooms, and more than half commenced screen use before 18 months old. Unfortunately, only about a third of parents were aware of professional recommendations on healthy screen use. To share with you, the AAP recommendations for screen use state that children under 18 months should not use screen devices at all, except for occasional video calling with relatives, as this constitutes social interaction. For children 2 to 5 years old, screen use should not exceed 1 hour per day and should be interactive wherever possible. In those 6 years and older, parents are still strongly encouraged to limit screen use and balance it with other healthier activities. Additionally, more detailed information on the children's daily routines showed that screen use took up much more of their day than other activities such as playing with other children, playing with toys, getting outdoors, or reading. The parents in this study reported high recreational screen use themselves. Finally, some other findings from this same study showed that many parents are concerned about their children's screen use and yet struggle with managing this. Preschool children with higher screen use were also more likely to have parents who also had higher screen use. Yet, having house rules about screen use, including no screen use at bedtimes or mealtimes, could significantly reduce screen use. Another survey conducted by KK Hospital in 100 parents of older children without developmental delays also looked at other issues like exercise and sedentary behavior. This survey showed that almost half of the children were not regularly having moderate to vigorous physical activity, and a quarter were spending most of their day being sedentary. 20% of children were not meeting their recommended sleep requirement, and 20% were also spending more than 4 hours on screen devices per day. Bear in mind that the higher recommended limit of 2 hours here is due to these children being mainly 6 years and older. Again, over a third of parents were unaware of screen use guidelines. Internationally, the American Academy of Pediatrics published their guidelines on screen use for young children in 2016. In 2019, the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health UK and the World Health Organization launched similar guidelines, but additionally highlighting the need to replace sedentary screen use with physical activity and good sleep. Together, though, these show that there is growing international concern about the detrimental effects of excessive or unregulated screen use on children worldwide. Locally in Singapore, our very own College of Pediatrics and Child Health Singapore has launched the Singapore Integrated 24-Hour Activity Guidelines for Children, which provides similar advice for parents in Singapore. These guidelines are available to the public on the internet, and I will highlight some of the key recommendations made a little later. Okay, now we come to the nitty-gritty, namely how to manage screen use for our children in the interests of their physical health as well as their mental development. The easiest way to remember that advice is as such: manage yourself, manage your environment, and manage your child. I will then share some useful resources after. Firstly, remember to manage yourself. As the adults and caregivers in the household, we have to limit our own screen use. We're on our screens all day. We probably have a longer screen time duration than our children. Some of it could be work, but we're also often on social media or playing games, doing online shopping, or messaging others. Before making any changes to your child's screen time, review your own screen time. Take a day and get a brief idea of your screen use duration. Observe when, where, and with whom you're using your screen time with. And most importantly, are you using it when you're with your child? And is it replacing interaction with your child? If you're uncomfortable with the results of your observations of your screen time use, you can think about changing your screen time habits. There are some ways to start. You can choose a specific period of time a day to be screen-free. Physically put your phone away for about an hour, not in your pocket, but in a different room. Do not have it with you so that you can take the time to be present with your child. Something else to consider is having a period of interactive family screen time. This means you have one device and there's shared attention and enjoyment while using the device. For example, when watching a family movie together. Next is to manage your environment. We can all start to implement house rules to reinforce healthy screen use, such as limiting use to 1 to 2 hours per day and avoiding all screen use during meal times and before bedtime. For this to be successful, extended family members such as grandparents and domestic workers need to be on board. Physical changes to the environment can also be made, such as removing all screen devices from children's bedrooms. Any use of screen devices by your child should preferably be in a shared space, such as the living and dining areas, so that you can monitor your child's viewing duration and check for content appropriateness. Finally, only after managing yourselves and your environment, then do you move on to managing your child. Think about how old your child is and therefore what the screen use limit should be. Also, pay attention to what programs your child is watching or what games they are playing with, and consider if the content is appropriate to your child's age. Try to avoid any overstimulating content and choose slower paced or more informative shows and games instead. The next few slides will cover what co-viewing is, the activity guidelines I mentioned earlier, and suggest some replacement activities. Co-viewing refers to watching screen content together with your child. Co-view with your child as much as possible so that you can explain things to your child, share funny moments, and teach more language. Go with watching what your child is interested in, but use the joint time together to teach about actions, emotions, and appropriate social skills. As mentioned earlier, I will now highlight some of the key recommendations from the Singapore Integrated 24-Hour Activity Guidelines. These guidelines were developed to ensure that children in Singapore have balanced daily lives. The first few recommendations focus on physical activity. And as you can see, children should be getting an average of an hour per day of moderate to vigorous physical activity with regular strengthening exercises and outdoor play. Whenever possible, children and their caregivers should use stairs instead of lifts and walk more instead of using transportation. The activity guidelines then go on to recommend that recreational screen time should be less than 2 hours per day for all children. But for younger children, such as preschoolers, that should be less than 1 hour per day and none at all for those under 18 months old. Additionally, recommendations are made for how much sleep children should be getting. But I would also add to avoid screen use at bedtime and to ensure there are no screen devices in children's bedrooms. Good eating habits are also encouraged, and again, remember to avoid screen use at meal times. Parents sometimes ask what replacement activities would be suggested instead of screen use. Do remember that many generations of children grew up without relying on screen devices for entertainment. Children develop cognitive skills through multisensory and experiential play. Children also learn language through two-way communication, which a screen device does not provide. Children should be having daily physical activity in playgrounds or doing sports. At home, structured activities such as art and craft, modeling dough, sewing, or beadwork can improve fine motor skills. Board games often build fun family memories, and reading together helps parent-child bonding. Pretend play, such as building a tent fort in your living room or playing cops and robbers, sparks imagination. Nature walks and volunteering in community teach children to be aware of their environment and to care for those around them. Finally, some resources that are useful for parents to have. The first link is for guiding families to create a family screen use plan for your home. The next two are sites which give good suggestions for replacement activities, such as what I just suggested in the previous slide. The fourth link is to a site that gives parents advice on whether program content is suitable for a child's age or not. And the last link highlights issues that I didn't cover so much in this talk, pertaining to older children and social media. So, in summary, the take-home messages from this webinar are to develop your own family screen use plans, incorporating some of the advice which I shared earlier, which are showed here again. Remember that parental screen use can really affect children's screen use. So start to restrict your own screen use around your child and spend more quality screen-free time with your child. Do ensure that your child has a balanced daily routine incorporating various activities by using the 24-hour activity guidelines, and change your home environment to allow more control over screen use when needed. Finally, when your child does have screen time, ensure that you have fun screen time together with your child as much as possible. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that the information in this webinar has been helpful for you.